This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for July 4th, 2024. Even though I'm releasing this on Wednesday evening, July 3rd, this is season 13, episode number 53, and this is episode number 438 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am Bob Howard, and this is the Power Play Post Show here in the summertime, talking hockey. And, they released the schedule after a lot of, I think, pulling teeth, maybe a little bit by the fans and by the media. They're like, come on, let's release this dang schedule. The schedule is finally released. I thought it was funny that I think it was on Monday we started seeing, here's the home openers, right? And then Wednesday, today, that I'm recording this right now, in the morning we saw the home schedules, right? And then at 3 p.m., the whole schedule drops. Just a recommendation out there to the FPHL, if you're listening, if anybody's listening from the head office, maybe some of the teams, some of the personnel from the teams that listen to this, if you're going to do some teases, do it in a little bit more of a different manner. Give us the home openers maybe 2 weeks before you drop the schedule. If you want to give us the home schedule, give it to us a week before, right? Kind of spread it out a little bit. 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, boom, you got everything dropped and you kind of did that. Just too close together and just didn't build up too much anticipation. There was already people just clamoring. I think this is the only league that is still left in pro hockey that needed to release their schedule. I know the NHL just did it a couple days ago as well. But either way, that's just my only complaint. It's like, spread that out a little bit, right? Maybe 2 weeks beforehand, give us the home opener. Hey, when is the Black Bears going to raise the banner? Oh, that's going to be on October 12th of this season on a Saturday. Give that to us, a couple weeks ahead of time, not 2 days ahead of time. It just felt really rushed and just a little weird. And as it was, I know there was holdups with the schedule, but it's out now. And that's the cool thing. Now fans can sit there and look at the schedule and go, I am going here. I'm going to go there. I'm going to follow the team there. I've already seen a ton of posts of people saying, I'm going down to Blue Ridge. I want to go to Blue Ridge and see the Black Bears play. Or I'm not going to Danbury. I don't care how many times we play them because of going there and just the experience is not favorable to the Binghamton Black Bears fans. I hope some people go out to Danville, Illinois, to see the Dashers. I was thinking about that being one of the trips that I made. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be in Wytheville, Virginia for two of the games, the Friday night game and the Saturday game in March. So I'm kind of excited about that. So I've already started to look at those type of things as well. And, possibly maybe a Hudson Valley game if I can get myself over to Newburgh, New York for one of those games. So it'll be very interesting. But the schedule is out. Hopefully you're excited about the schedule. Hopefully you're excited about what they've done. I think the schedule is a little bit better this year. I think there's a couple things that can still be better, but I think the schedule is better than it was last year. And there's certain reasons why. But I think a lot of the fans are just excited to have it out and be able to start planning. And I hope season tickets across the league are doing well. We know Monroe is doing well. Binghamton usually does well. I was actually in the offices just a couple weeks ago, and a guy comes in and says, "Yep, I want to renew. I want to pay it off, and I want to renew." So one guy came in to pay it off, and one guy came in to actually just renew, which was pretty cool to see. So that happens throughout the summertime. The teams are really busy. They have a lot to do in the summertime. Graphics guys are creating graphics, and new templates for the new season. Salespeople are trying to sell. They're trying to get the corporate sponsorships. They're trying to get the ticket sales, and they try to get as much of that done because in a 56 game schedule, there's a lot to do, right? So these people who are selling the majority of the summertime, they have to turn their focus to selling and doing other things. So there's a lot to do. I don't think probably we give enough credit to the people that work in the offices and what they do and how they put it all together. So kudos to them and how hard they work. When I was at the Black Bears offices, they were all eating lunch and they were just talking and really enjoying each other, and that's kind of a really cool thing. So let's get to the must-read so I can get to the 56-game schedule and talk about that a little bit. And, we'll have a guest in a little bit as well, Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash. So excited about having him back on here in the summertime. The Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast. And please subscribe. And yes, we are on YouTube now as well. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for the Power Play Post Show and share with any of your friends and family who are also Black Bears fans. Check out BinghamtonHockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity, including an article about the new schedule. And on this edition of the Power Play Post Show, from the Fed League Flash, our good friend Gary Ryan made another visit to talk about the schedule that was just released a little bit earlier today. All right, so let's talk about it. The 56-game schedule is out. I think pretty much every single team has released it. I know earlier today, I think the last team that hadn't yet was the Watertown Wolves. Not sure why, but I'm sure it's out by now. And let's talk a little bit about the good and the bad of this schedule, okay? First, the good. Let's start off with the good stuff. The Black Bears play 11 of the 13 possible opponents, and only Monroe and Baton Rouge are not on the Black Bears list of opponents this year. I get that. I mean, Monroe and Baton Rouge are way out there, and yes, they go see Mississippi for 3 games, but it doesn't mean that Monroe and Baton Rouge are in town that weekend where they could have maybe played a game against each, right? One night Mississippi, the other night Baton Rouge, maybe the other night Monroe, and then you leave. I don't even know if that's viable because it's like a 4 or 5 hour trip in between all 3 of those cities as well, maybe even longer between Mississippi and Baton Rouge. So, I think it's okay. Not every team is going to play every team. And I know they like that, but there's some intricacies about the schedule that doesn't even make it seem that way, right? There are going to be some fans that are going to be like, oh, we played against Blue Ridge? Yeah, we played 3 games down in Wytheville, Virginia against them. Oh, but we didn't play them in Binghamton? No. So there's some intricacies about that. But I'm okay with Monroe and Baton Rouge not being on the schedule. It's quite okay. I have a feeling Monroe might be a very good team anyway, so maybe we'll face them in the finals. The Black Bears only play 1 team in double digits, which is the Danbury Hat Tricks, 10 versus last year 18 times. All other opponents, it's less than 10 times, which I really like. I like that. I don't want to see the same team 18, 20 times. And I think you're going to see that throughout most of the scheduling. There's a couple teams that play each other 14 times, but when you're in the Midwest, that kind of is going to be expected when there's really only 2 teams really close to each other, and then Danville is still 7 or 7.5 hours away from them, from Motor City. So 14 times, totally understand that. I'm sorry, 10 times against Danbury. I'm okay with that. It's less. They're still going to be our biggest rival. I think those games are going to be still very, very good, but it's better than 18 times last year, so I'm really high on that. Only 3 games and 3 nights on the schedule. And folks, this is the best thing. Last year there were 5 3 games and 3 nights. Now, 3 games and 3 nights is tough. Now, these 2 that we have are tough ones, right? because the Black Bears will travel to Biloxi, Mississippi in January to play against the Sea Wolves. 3 games, 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. Tough. That will be tough. As well as 3 games in Wytheville in March against the Bobcats. A little bit less tough because they're closer. The bus ride is still going to be long, 7.5 hours, I think. I got to map this out to make sure I know how long it's going to take me to get to Wytheville from Binghamton. But it's a pretty long haul on a bus, right? So you're going to go down on Thursday more than likely, play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then come home. It's tough. But there's only 2 of those this year. I'm happy with that. I'm good with that. Thank you. I just think it's just better to have less and less of the 3 games in 3 nights. Now, I know that for other teams in the league, this was not really an option, right? Because the travel the way it is just forces teams to come in for the whole weekend and play a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I think Binghamton is lucky in the sense that they got only 3 games in 3 nights. So I'm happy with that. I thought overall the schedule was okay. But there are some bad parts of the schedule that I don't like. And I'm going to be frank with you guys, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it and just say, oh, it's a great schedule. Let's move on. Let's get the season started, right? But so here's my bad list. Here's my bad part of it. Too many series where games are not played in both teams' home arenas, okay? For instance, Binghamton sees Carolina and Columbus at the arena, but do not travel to their arenas this season. I can tell you right now, there are Carolina Thunderbird fans that are not happy about this. They liked the series against the Binghamton Black Bears and would have liked to have seen it. And there are some Binghamton fans who wanted to go to Carolina this upcoming regular season. There was a friendship and a relationship between Carolina and Binghamton, and Carolina comes here, but we do not go there. Columbus is back on the schedule for the Black Bears, which is great. Love that. But they come to the arena 2 different times to play 3 games, but we don't travel to their arena down in Columbus, Georgia, which is unfortunate because we will be in Athens at the end of the season, and somehow that just couldn't work out. Now, it's a very tough thing. You have to understand, just imagine doing a schedule in the AHL where there are 30-plus teams, right? The NHL, there's 32 teams. And you just have to work out every single scenario, and then you have to call this arena and say, can we play a game at this time? And all the open dates and availabilities. It's a tough thing to do, right? So I get it. So I'm not going to beat on it too much. The Black Bears do play against Athens, Blue Ridge, and Mississippi, but Binghamton fans will not see those teams at the arena this year, okay? And so, again, there are 5 opponents for the Black Bears where 2 of them, Black Bears don't go there, and 3 of them, they don't come here to Binghamton. So just hate that. 1 game against Carolina. We just faced them in the finals. It was a great series. People, I know Carolina fans are unhappy that they didn't win a game, but there was a special weird thing that happened between Carolina and Binghamton, and they just became friends. And it's just too bad that we will only see 1 game against the Carolina Thunderbirds in our schedule. Something I didn't like. When I saw that, I was like, no. Inconsistent amount of games. Here's my final point. The part I really didn't like. There's an inconsistent amount of games versus divisional foes. What do I mean by that? Well, with Danbury, we play against them 10 times. 6 in Danbury, 4 in Binghamton, okay? Hudson Valley, they will come to Binghamton 5 times and we'll play in their rink 4 times for 9 games. Watertown is the only one that's really kind of consistent. 4 games up in Watertown, 4 games here in Binghamton, 8 games. So in the first 3, in the true Empire Division part of our division, so to speak, we played Danbury 10 times, Hudson Valley 9 times, and Watertown 8 times. Just don't really care for that too much. Now, the Dashers, we played against them 6 times. They'll come here 4 times. We'll go there twice for 2 games. And Port Huron, same type of thing. They'll come here 4 times. We'll go there twice for 6 games. They're the only 2 teams that we play the same amount of games against in the season, right? So you could take a look at how do we do against the Dashers, how do we do against Port Huron, and you can kind of compare numbers. But unfortunately, we only travel to Danville and Port Huron for 4 games total out of the 12 games. So it's hard to kind of compare those things and come up with a fair assessment how the teams played against them equally on the road or at home. And with Motor City, we play them again like last season, 5 games. I believe Motor City comes here twice, and we play against them 3 times at the arena. So from 10 games against one of our division foes to 5 games. I just don't like that inconsistency. I don't like that there's not a balanced part of the schedule where it's 5 games. Now, and if in this case you take 1 game against Hudson Valley and you give it to Motor City, and we played even times in Danbury and Binghamton, Hudson Valley and Binghamton, Watertown and Binghamton, 3 times in Danville, 3 times in Binghamton for that series, and so on and so forth. If that was equal across the board, I'd probably be less, about it. But it's just one of those things where, again, it's all about arena availability and trying to fit the schedule in. It's not an easy task. I do not envy the people who did it or put this together. Sarge and Paul Atwell and Don Kernan. I don't envy any of you guys for doing that. So if you're listening to this, trust me, my complaints are because that's the reality, not because anybody did anything wrong, so to speak. That's just my thoughts on that. The other news that came out this week for the Binghamton Black Bears is that Dakota Bohn is back with the team. So he's re-signed. Now, folks, I saw some people saying, why are they burning PTOs? They're not burning PTOs. The PTOs during the summertime are just to get people kind of like in an agreement, and then they'll sign them to a standard contract as camps kind of conclude just before they start play. So a standard player's contract will happen. Now, we don't know if the 4-game PTOs will happen again this year. I'm going to assume that everything kind of stays the same. You're going to have the same amount of players on the team, 19 players. Probably have the 12 or 14 4-game PTOs, whatever it was. I'm guessing that'll probably be that'll probably be what's going to happen there. But Dakota Bohn re-signs with the Binghamton Black Bears and signs that PTO. And I got to be honest with you, I was surprised to see this so quickly. I just assumed he was going to be in a camp in the ECHL somewhere, and he still could be. That's why these are PTOs. This is an agreement that if he's going to play in the Federal Prospects Hockey League, he's probably going to play for the Binghamton Black Bears, okay? But I have a feeling that Dakota Bohn might get an invite somewhere else, and I could be wrong. There could be conversations between Brant and Dakota saying, nope, I'm not going to go anywhere else. I'm definitely coming back here, going to play another season with you, and then maybe try for the ECHL. I think he's the one guy that came in from the ECHA that has a legitimate chance to get there. He is, 6'3". If he puts on a few more pounds of muscle, I think he could play at a higher level without a doubt. Last year, he gave us 16 goals, 35 assists for 51 points, and just played really well. 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points in the playoffs, helping the team to win the championship. He had a power play goal and a shorthanded goal in the playoffs, and had 10 power play goals for the Binghamton Black Bears last year. I expect the Black Bears with Andrew Logar, I would hope, coming back, and Dakota Bohn being here potentially for the full season. The power play is not going to change. Tyson Kirkby being on there It's not going to change. However, so just to explain one more time, PTOs in the summertime are not the same as the 4-game PTOs in the regular season. So don't worry about that. Everybody will sign everybody to PTOs, and then standard contracts will happen after camp has concluded or during camp or however or whenever Brant and Andreas determine that they can do that with the players. So Dakota Bohn is back. Regular season schedule is out, and that's pretty much it. So I'm pretty excited for you guys to hear from Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash. He and I will break down the schedule a little bit more, talk a little bit more about Binghamton's schedule, but also about some of the interesting parts of the schedule for the league. So stay tuned and listen to that. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show, he is Gary Ryan. It is the Fed League Flash, and we'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to the Power Play Post Show. Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. As you just heard, I just kind of went over the Binghamton Black Bears schedule, but I wanted to bring in a good friend and talk a little bit more somewhat about the league and, of course, still about the Binghamton Black Bears schedule as well. You guys all know him from the Fed League Flash, and I just call him Gary, the guy who's probably about my age, and we think the same way. And that's just the way it is. Gary, welcome back to the show, and I hope you're having a good summer. And I know you've got some health and back and all that kind of stuff going on. I hope you're feeling okay right now and comfortable down there. And hopefully the 2 whiteboards are next to you somewhere.
Well, no, I don't have the whiteboards, but I got a notebook and I got my laptop with everything. So
Very
good
cool.
to go. You know,
very cool. The schedule was released. There's a lot to digest. There's more teams now, 14 teams versus 11 teams. That adds obviously over 100 and over 160 plus games to the schedule. So now the FPHL has to really work hard. They have to get one of those really big whiteboards just to get all the teams now on there to actually kind of create a matrix, as you already know from doing a couple of your videos and everything. Let's start off with the obvious. We'll talk about Binghamton in just a little bit. Let's talk about the obvious. Once again, Baton Rouge has that really long stretch. And you noticed a couple other teams that also had long stretches where they're either on the road or they're at home and everything. Talk a little bit about that scenario, especially start off with Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Baton Rouge, and thank goodness the fans were kind of prepared this year and understand, because now it's like, okay, we saw this last year. We know how the relationship is between the Zydeco and the Raising Cane's Arena. There are certain things that just take precedence, and Mardi Gras is such a big, big deal. So the Raising Cane's Arena books Mardi Gras like 4 years in advance.
Wow.
So obviously the Zydeco are kind of left out in the cold, but they understood that going in when they jumped into the market. So 16 road games in a row between January 10th and March 8th. And then, of course, the other team in Louisiana, Monroe, they've got a similar situation. So they're going to be on the road for 11 games in a row between February 20th and March 21st.
Now, Gary, from Monroe, is it for the same reasons? Is it because of Mardi Gras? I thought that was just usually in New Orleans, but it's the whole state of Louisiana that really celebrates this, correct?
Yeah, it really is. It's just such a huge thing. I mean, it's a regional event.
Okay.
So, it makes a big difference.
And How do you think that's going to affect Monroe in their first season? It's less games for them than it is for Baton Rouge, and I want to say it affected Baton Rouge last year, but I really don't know if it really affected them. Yeah, one of the things that I remember talking to a lot of AHL coaches back when the AHL was here in Binghamton, and they said, you know what, we like to start off the season on the road, right? Kind of gets the guys together, and they can kind of build relationships, and they can get better. But this isn't at the beginning of the season. This is really near the middle or the tail end of the season for these teams and everything. So it does affect them a little bit differently.
Yeah, it does. I've alluded a couple of times in like my YouTube videos how Baton Rouge, they got off to a terrible start. But then as they brought in new players, as they were able to recruit better throughout the season, they got better, and ironically, about the time that they started kind of upticking was when they're on the road playing Mississippi 8 times in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. It was really kind of odd, but if I remember correctly, Baton Rouge won 3 of those 8 games, and it was kind of the ball that got everything rolling for them. Whereas at the end of the year, they were a pretty decent competitive club.
And you did mention that Mississippi kind of does feel a little bit of the love here because with these two teams having to struggle, Baton Rouge comes in for I believe what it is 5 games. Those 5 games, but it's piggybacked with a couple games against Carolina and 3 games against the Dashers Hockey Club that'll come in, and so they get like 11 games in a row at home during this same time period. So it's a pretty interesting scenario for those 3 Southern teams. But again, the Black Bears get shut out here in Binghamton for a couple weeks when they bring in the basketball tournament, and it's been like that for hockey in Binghamton for the Southern Tier DWI Classic, I think it is, and and no matter what, they're always not going to play in Binghamton that weekend that they do that. So this is just a longer time period, which just seems drastic, but it's just the way it's going to be in this part of the country.
Yeah, it is, and we're about 90% certain that for the 25-26 season, we're going to have Beaumont coming into play. They're not all that far away from New Orleans, so I would think that there is going to be an impact there too.
Mm-hmm. Very possible. Very possible. Let's talk a little bit about Athens. Obviously, a brand new rink being built down in Athens, Georgia, and that team, according to what we see here with the schedule, their first, I think it's 11 games. Did you say is going to be on the road as well? So maybe this will help the Athens Rock Lobsters kind of come together as a team early on in the season and say they go 50-50. They win 5 or they win 6 out of those 11. That could be a good thing for the team. But you and I were kind of talking beforehand, and we're thinking, well, more than likely, just the rink is not going to be ready for them until November 30th, which will be their first game at home against the Carolina Thunderbirds. Right,
yeah, because when Athens announced the team and the name and the branding and all that, they said at the time, they said October 25th is our home opener. Obviously, now that is not going to happen.
Yeah.
But like you said, maybe it works out for the better.
Now, this is a brand new team. Do you think this is going to have an impact on fans? Because, they're going to have to wait until really the end of the first full month just to see their team for the first time.
Well, I don't know. Things are tough in the South. I mean, SEC football rules. Mm-hmm. That's the game in town. So, and you've got the Georgia Bulldogs right there in town. So, obviously, the bulk of the college football season is September, October, and into November. So, maybe once the Bulldogs kind of have their season at least mostly wrapped up, people start thinking, hey, there's a hockey team in town. I'm going to go check that out. So we'll see.
How many games is Athens and Columbus playing each other this year? Is it 12 games?
Hold on. I got to go back to the other page. I
think it is 6 and 6. They're split.
Okay, yeah,
6 and 6. Do you think that's the right amount between those two teams? We've talked about pod scheduling. We've talked about imbalanced, unbalanced schedules, all of that kind of stuff, balanced schedules and everything. Do you think where those two teams are, Athens, Georgia, and Columbus, Georgia, do you think that's the right amount, 12 games?
Yeah, I do. I think 12 is kind of for a 56-game season, I think 12 is kind of the perfect number for a big rivalry. Where you're not overdoing it. There are several cases like Motor City and Port Huron where they see each other 14 times. Was it Monroe and Mississippi are playing each other 13 times. So you've got that. Or Danbury and Hudson Valley 13 times.
Sure.
So I would say if you do it anymore, you're going to kind of get worn out. I mean, you remember we would get into early March and then, we'd be getting ready for a game and everybody around us is talking about, well, Danbury again. It was just kind of too much.
The other thing that we noticed about the schedule, there are 4 games for the Dashers Hockey Club that they'll be playing in Topeka, Kansas. Obviously, the league wants to expand. There's going to be 2 exhibition games. At least we think they're exhibition games in Beaumont, Texas, or it says Texas. So,
yeah.
Your thoughts on playing these games there? Obviously, the Dashers knew going into this that they were probably losing 4 games to Topeka. Not that the Dashers did anything wrong or the fanship. I mean, this is a team that's just coming back, but they had to take from somewhere to potentially play in Topeka to test the market, so to speak, like in Beaumont. Test the market.
Yeah. Well, Topeka is Barry Soskin's baby for not this upcoming season, but the season after that. So he's really pouring everything that he can into really building up that market and making sure that it's going to work and that the fans there are excited about Fed hockey coming. So as I look at things, it only impacts Baton Rouge twice and Port Huron twice. But, and that kind of makes sense because Topeka would be kind of a halfway point between Baton Rouge and Danville. But, so that's, and that, of course, that's January and beginning of February. So, it's going to be 4 days pretty close to each other.
Now, they did this kind of test with Mississippi before Mississippi came back in, if I remember correctly, and it was a success in Mississippi. They had a lot of fans there. Do you think that we'll see the same type of results, that Topeka fans will just show up and we'll see sellouts? And what's the arena like in Topeka?
Actually, I have not seen many interior pictures from the outside. It looks beautiful, nice glass window type architecture and everything. But I don't know because Topeka has had 3 go-rounds with hockey at different levels, and it hasn't worked out. I don't know enough details as far as whether that was due to management issues or attendance issues or what. But, Topeka is kind of on their 4th go-around now.
So it'll be interesting. And then Beaumont, Texas, we've seen the inside of that one. There's a great picture of the arena itself. It looks like a nice arena, but there's some configuration changes that you and I both know that they have to make, adding benches and penalty boxes to the arena, because they haven't had hockey there in, 20 years?
I can't remember if it was 2007 or 2008. But that was the last season.
Still, that's a long time.
It has been a long time, and to the point where the ice plant that they had, no longer worked. So it's already in the works that they're going to bring a new one in.
If every team succeeds this year, and every team stays, and they bring Topeka and Beaumont in just as expansion teams, and they get to 16, you think that, as we're talking about the schedule and everything with Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash, Gary, you think 16 teams is an ideal place to be, but would these 16 teams be in the right places in the country?
That's a good question. I think we're pretty solid in the Southeast. We're pretty solid in the Northeast. You can kind of anticipate how those teams are going to draw attendance-wise against each other. We're still kind of feeling things out in the Midwest and the Southwest. Although Monroe, I mean, my goodness, purportedly they already have 3,300 season ticket inquiries.
That's crazy.
In a 5,600-seat arena. So I think that place is going to be packed.
Well, Gary, can we talk about Monroe for just a second here? I want to get your comments, because when they did the press conference, the owner of the Monroe Moccasins, I can't remember his name exactly, he's from New Orleans, and he talked really big about, I want to get an NHL team to New Orleans and everything. I think that this is the kind of owner, and correct me if I'm wrong, that just seems excited about bringing in sports, high-level sports, into his state and everything. And I think there's a lot of excitement and energy because of him. And you and I think both agree that Parker Mescal has done a phenomenal job so far.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, just to clarify things, Parker Mescal is a partial owner.
Wow.
He's the minority owner, but he is the operating manager. So, he's making all the decisions as far as the draft picks and bringing players in and everything. But Nick Perkin is the one that is holding the money, if you will, and financing the whole operation. But he's put his trust in Mescal being able to generate the excitement. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, he was laying the groundwork as early as last November to get this whole thing going. And he really poured his heart and soul into it. So it's not like this was a surprise to the people who knew what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, it was a surprise to us fans. It's like, oh, Monroe's in, okay. But this was being worked on long and hard for a long time.
Gary, the majority of the games in the league this season will be played on Friday and Saturday. Obviously, that's good for this level of hockey. They need the Friday and Saturday dates. The majority is like that. How many teams this upcoming season can we see break 100,000? We saw Baton Rouge and Binghamton do it. And obviously, I really think that Binghamton and Baton Rouge might just do it again. So how many teams do you think can we add to that? Can Monroe hit 100,000 this year?
I think Monroe's a shoo-in. I also think Columbus is a shoo-in. They've been very close last 2 years. The last 2 years, they've drawn 98,000 plus. Now with a new regional rival, an in-state rival, I think that's going to boost interest in people coming to see games. So I think they'll cross the threshold
I hope they do.
I definitely think Baton Rouge will again as well.
Yeah, but if Columbus does it, how much of the capacity is that for them? Because Columbus is usually pretty close to capacity, right?
Well, no, actually,
or is it Carolina?
If you do the math, if you do the math, to get to 100,000, you have to average 35.71 per game, and Columbus's capacity is 7,700.
Oh, okay, so they can do more. Okay.
They did have the one sellout this last year, and there were a couple of games in which they drew over 5,000. So, I mean, they can do it. It's just a matter
They've just missed the last couple of years when they really could have. It's Carolina that it has the smaller capacity amount, and they get so close, but they're not going to break that.
No, I think they max out at 84,000, but they've been leading the league the last couple of years in percent capacity.
Yeah, which is a number I love. I love that number. I know Binghamton rides right around that 78, 79, 80%, and I still think that's a viable number that you can use to be successful. And then, of course, they had, Binghamton had 7 sellouts this past year, plus one in the finals. That was 5,011, which is the biggest amount ever in Binghamton hockey history for a playoff game, which I think is pretty amazing, or even a regular season game. Let's talk a little bit about Binghamton's schedule for a little bit. Obviously, a lot of the fans that are listening to this are from Binghamton. Is there a part of you that's a little surprised that Binghamton is not opening up the league's season at home, raising the banner, but instead they're going to be on the road up in Watertown on Friday first, and then come back Saturday and raise their championship banner in front of the Binghamton fans?
Well, if you want to be technical about it, this will be the first time in 4 years with the franchise history that we're starting on the road. Although last year our opening game was supposed to be in Elmira,
and
on the road, there were issues at the arena, so that ended up getting pushed back. So we were scheduled to be on the road; it just didn't happen. But it's very interesting. I'm glad that we have the Saturday game of those two because I think that'll be a bigger draw.
It's got to be an automatic sellout, right, for the first game, raising the banner?
I think so. If it's not a sellout, I think it's going to be pretty darn close.
Now, here's the thing that I noticed, and actually Brooks Hill brought this to my attention before I even saw the schedule. He said in the first 4 weeks, Binghamton will see 4 different teams in Binghamton. Obviously, the first week we talked about it, the Watertown Wolves. But then on Saturday, the week after, it's going to be the Hudson Valley Venom. And then the week after that, Port Huron Prowlers, which we'll see 6 times this year. And then the week after that, the Danbury Hat-Tricks come to Binghamton. I really like the fact that in the first 4 weeks, Binghamton will see 4 different teams.
Yeah, and I kind of like the idea as well that we're starting off with 2 home and homes.
Yeah,
they're closer, so it's not going to be an exhausting road trip.
No,
but I think that's really good. You made a point earlier as far as starting on the road. Potentially could help a team to kind of
build chemistry,
find its ice legs. So I think this is a good start.
Now, obviously, I like to do matrices. I like to look at the matrix and everything. No, I don't live in a matrix, even though sometimes I feel like it. Let me run through a few of the things. So the matrix by team for Binghamton. Binghamton will not see Athens in Binghamton. They will not see Blue Ridge in Binghamton, even though they'll play both of those teams, Athens twice, Blue Ridge 3 times, okay? They will also see Mississippi, but they'll see Mississippi down in Mississippi for 3 games as well. Those are the 3 teams that we play that Binghamton fans will not see unless they watch it on YouTube.
Right.
I like the fact that we're playing Athens and Blue Ridge and Mississippi. I think it's great. We're keeping those teams. We're seeing Blue Ridge for the first time in 2 years, and obviously
Right.
Athens is new. We saw Mississippi last year in Binghamton, but not in Mississippi. But we did, the year before that, we saw them in Mississippi. So talk about, first of all, those three teams not coming to Binghamton, but we're going to their locations.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. Just as a fan, my tendency as a fan is I want to see all the teams. I want to see them on the home ice. I want to see them play away, which we get back to that balance issue. I know that arena availability plays a part in things, and some teams can only schedule games at a certain time of the year, so that's going to kind of throw a wrench into the works. But it's a little disappointing to especially Blue Ridge. I mean, Blue Ridge is looking like it's going to be a very good club, and of course, there are some former Black Bears on the team, so
Sure.
It would be great to see them here in Binghamton, and it's not going to happen. So that was a bit of a bummer.
Now, equally, on the flip side of that, we played against Carolina, obviously, in the Commissioner's Cup Championship. We only see them once. They come to Binghamton for one game. And then the team that we didn't see last year, probably the best team in the league, other than the Binghamton Black Bears, the Columbus River Dragons, we'll see them 3 times, but they won't see Binghamton and Columbus at all. So there are 5 teams that we play against, and we either see them just in Binghamton or we see them just on the road. And that's just, to me, that's the part of the imbalanced schedule that I just don't like.
I agree, and we look at our arch rival Danbury. We travel to Danbury 6 times. We only see them at the Visions Veterans Memorial Arena 4 times.
Yeah,
and for 2 teams that are as close geographically together as the 2 teams are, I don't understand why you can't make that 5-5.
Yeah. The other matrix that I like to look at is how many games you play home and away by month, right? And obviously it's very awkward. January, 3 games at home, 7 games on the road for 10 games. Brutal stretch. And it's the teams we also play against in that's a brutal stretch as well. February, 6 games at home, 1 game on the road. But a few of those teams that are coming in for that February stretch are going to be good teams as well. So I think January and February is the toughest stretch for the Binghamton Black Bears this upcoming season.
Yeah, and I remember in the Tully's Good Times with Coach show, Brooks and Brant would talk about how that's the toughest time of the year to kind of get the players going and get them into the games and into daily practice, and because you're pretty far removed from the beginning of the season, and it's still a long way to the playoffs. So you kind of have the dog days of winter, I guess you could call them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then the 2 Athens games are unfortunately at the end of the season, so you don't see Athens until the end. And that's down in the Classic Center Arena, which is being built now as we talk. The Blue Ridge games down in Blue Ridge are not until March 7th, 8th, and 9th at the Hitachi Energy Arena. And yes, I'm getting all these names right. I know I am, which is pretty cool. And it's spread out. What's interesting is the Danbury games, other than the 3 that are in the row, in Danbury in November, the games against Hudson Valley, Watertown, and Danbury are very much spread out, which I really like.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really think that the league did a good job as far as taking the northeastern pod, the 4 teams there, and I wish there was more balance with home and away. But as far as just how they kind of spread them throughout the year, I like how things ended up.
Another interesting part of the January games is 2 games at the McMorran Arena against Port Huron. Then the weekend after that, 2 games against Motor City at the Big Boy Arena. And then when we get down to it, there's really 3 games against Mississippi at the Mississippi Coast Coliseum. So January is going to be interesting because they're going to go to the Midwest. They're going to go down to the South and play against the Mississippi Seawolves for 3 games in 3 nights. Very interesting kind of stretch there for Binghamton.
Yeah, that's really going to be the test for the year. We talked about, it's kind of difficult to get the players keyed up and geared up for each game. But also, typically, that's the time of the year where if you're going to battle the injury bug, that's usually about the time when it starts to flare up. So that's going to be really, really tough on Dylan and Elise, on everybody in the organization. So it's really going to test our mettle, that's for sure.
Gary, let me run a couple of these numbers by you. Danbury played 10 games this season instead of 18 like last year. Watertown is only 8 games instead of 13 games last year. Elmira, when they were in Elmira, it was 13 games. Now it's going to be 9 games. I do like the fact that we play 11 of the 13 teams. I just kind of wish that the games against the teams we play against was a little bit more even. Like if you take 2 games away from Danbury and Binghamton and you give maybe 1 more to Watertown or maybe 2 more to Danville to get them a little bit closer, because right now the people in our own division, it's not even close on how many games you play against them.
Yeah, it's very odd. I look at my little graph here, and I've got whenever you have odd numbers instead of even numbers,
yes,
you know that things are going to be bizarre. But I have so many 3s and 5s, and that just looks weird.
It very much does. Okay, so let me ask you. We talked a little bit about Monroe and the ticket sales, and they've done a great job of really bringing in people. Give me your thoughts. I saw the video about the expansion draft. I agree with you. I think that if the grades that you gave some of those people makes perfect sense to me, because I don't think they reached out to some of the players and said, "Hey, would you actually come to us if we drafted you in the expansion draft?" And I don't think there's a rule against them contacting a player and saying, "Hey, we're gonna draft you. Do you think we'll be able to work something out?" And if a guy says, "No, I'm retiring," then you don't pick him. You know what I mean? Athens passed on their last 2 picks because they probably thought, well, none of these guys are going to come here, or we don't want any of these guys anyways. So give me your thoughts on how teams have done, not just in the expansion draft, but really signing players, kind of like Monroe has.
Well, Monroe is interesting. I understand the philosophy that that Parker is kind of putting in with formulating the team. He's got a couple of brand new rookies, but they got 26 on their roster already, and most of those players, like 23 or 24, have a good amount of Fed experience. And I think even though Monroe hasn't seen hockey in so many years, they are still a passionate fan base, and they're aware of what goes on. So I think that they see Parker choosing experienced people, and that will probably get them really excited. And it's like, hey, we got these people who've been playing in the Fed for 2, 3, 4 years. They know what it's like. They know what they know what it's all about. I want to see what they can do for our new team. So I think he's done much better as far as signing players than he did with drafting, because in the video I did with grading the drafts, there's I believe Monroe chose 3 people that are not going to be playing this year. And it has nothing to do with Monroe. It's just they're done with their hockey career and they're moving on to the next chapter of their life.
Yeah, it's like when Athens drafted Colin Fitzgerald. There was talk amongst the Binghamton backstage media, whatever you want to call us and everything, that Colin probably wasn't coming back. And I think it would have been an easy conversation and maybe even mutual respect between teams. And, maybe someone could have reached out to Brant Sherwood and said, hey, do you think Colin's going to, you guys, well, and they moved him. The 24 hours, before the draft, they changed their thing to take him off of there. Why would you take him? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And it kind of stinks to have to talk about this aspect, but there's obviously a game going on. Everybody's trying to figure out ways of outsmarting the other guy when you work as a GM or a coach or whatever. So obviously, when the 8 teams chose their protected lists and then said, hey, we think we want to make a couple changes, they knew what they were doing. Yeah. and that goes back to that due diligence that you were talking about, where if I was the GM of Baton Rouge and I called all the players on Binghamton and say, hey, if I chose you, would you be interested? And get your yes or no. Well, let the yes be yes and the no be no. But then with the no's, at least call again and just say, I just want to make sure. Are we clear on this?
Yeah.
Are you a definite no?
Because it's kind of like a recruiting call, right? It's like I call up Justin Samaro and say, hey, Justin, I know you played in Binghamton. You also played a little bit in the SP. We'd like to bring you down to, say, Richmond, Virginia, to play on our team. And you could just have a simple conversation with them and say, hey, this is what we're going to want you to do. We know you're on the third line, and we know you could be our best second line, left winger. We'd like to bring you in and, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can recruit them, that type of thing. I'm just surprised that a little bit more of that didn't happen, and you see so many picks kind of get wasted in that sense. So it's that to me, that's very interesting. Let me ask you about this. Blue Ridge brought back Owen Liskowitz. Do you think he's going to have because I think you think that Blue Ridge is going to be a good team this year. Do you think he's going to have a comeback kind of season this upcoming year?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I hesitate to think of things as a comeback year because actually last year he actually had a decent year. His numbers weren't the greatest, but then again, on Blue Ridge, nobody's was.
Sure.
But he was a very solid player, and he actually became very much a leader in the locker room, which I think that's one of the things that they're looking for there is for the leaders to really step up and lead the players on the ice and off. But I think he's going to have a decent year again. The question now comes in. This is going to be his fourth year, I believe, in the Fed.
Yes.
So, no, I'm sorry, his fifth. He actually played the year before he was with Binghamton. So he's been around. Is the body holding up? I hate to think about that, but you kind of have to, especially as a goalie.
Well, you're a former goalie, so you understand what that's like.
Yeah. So, but I still think Connor Green's going to be the number one guy in Blue Ridge.
Okay. Yeah, because they brought both of them back so quickly and everything. Before I let you go, are you surprised Binghamton? And now you and I both know that Coach Sherwood was in Italy for 2 weeks, and he's been, doing his thing, taking a very well-rested vacation and whatnot. But were you surprised that we've only seen Dakota Bohn, Tyson Kirkby, and Brant Sherwood really sign back up for next year so far?
Actually, no. We started off very early. Like I remember we signed Dustin Gisso, and that was like towards the end of June. And at that time, I was thinking, boy, that's an awfully early signing. Most of the players that end up getting recruited and drafted, that's a terrible word, recruited and brought in. That usually happens over the course of August and early September, and that's where you're really going to see a big influx, I think, of, Binghamton has signed so-and-so, whether it's somebody that we are familiar with or it's somebody that's brand new. And I've mentioned to many Binghamton fans, when the year started this last year, we didn't know half of these guys, half of the team. We were like, what is Brant doing? And, we found out Brant knew what he was doing. So I have faith that that's going to happen again, that Brant's going to bring in the veteran guys that he feels need to be here and want to be here, and then he's going to be able to use that to recruit new talent and new blood. And I think our chances of repeating as champions is very good. Yeah. Is it a lock? No, but I think it's very good.
Yeah, let's talk about some simple numbers here. They had 24 people that they held the rights to at the end of the championship series and everything. 5 of them got drafted in the expansion draft. So that's 5 players right off right there. That brings you down to 19. We know that that Liam Anderson is going to play in Germany. That takes you down to 18. So there's a good core of players that they can still bring back. That's if players like Gavin Yates comes back or Donald Oliveri comes back. But, if Brand's back, Tyson's back, Donald Oliveri, if he can play 20 games and make the playoffs, he could easily certainly do that depending on how his situation is at the time. Yeah. So it's without a doubt you have the ability to bring back a good core of this team to play another season and go for another championship. Yep,
exactly. I mean, it's so easy to look at when the draft happens and think, oh man, look who we lost. And I wish we hadn't lost anybody, but it happens. It's got to happen. But look at all the players that we didn't lose.
Right.
And how many of those are very, very likely to return for this next season. Yeah. So I think we're good.
All right, give us a preview. What are the videos going to be like this Saturday and Sunday on YouTube for the Fed League Flash?
Well, Saturday I'm going to probably touch up a little bit more on the schedule. Mm-hmm. Just to kind of cover some things that, well, I'm not going to be able to do any kind of broadcast until then. So I'm definitely going to be talking about that. As far as Sunday goes, I haven't made up my mind yet. So usually Sundays I get my ideas like Thursday or Friday. So okay, this is what I'm going to do. So we're going to be surprised at this point.
Now, Gary, you other than YouTube and Facebook Live, you're now on a platform called Spreaker. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is. I needed an audio only app that was mobile. That's something that I could use on my phone while I'm at work. So this was the best opportunity. I'm just kind of getting it set up now. Eventually, I will be able to into having it also on Spotify and some other podcasts. So to the summer, I'm working on that. Once I get to September, that's when I'm going to release.
All right, awesome. Gary, thank you very much as always. It's the Fed League Flash. Find them on Spreaker. You can find them on Facebook, of course, and as well as YouTube, which is where the whiteboards are. Will we see both whiteboards this upcoming season, or is it just going to be the new big one?
No, it's got to be both, because this is something we didn't mention about with the schedule. There are 30 days this year in which there are 7 games each day.
I love it.
So I can fit 4 games on one and 3 on the other.
Nice. But because you got to spread it out a little bit, because the one whiteboard is a little bit bigger, it'll allow you to maybe put in a few extra stats or something that, maybe you didn't do before because you didn't have enough room.
Yeah, but I still want to try and keep things, relatively close to 15 minutes. So there is that that limitation.
That's true. And if with 14 teams and 7 games, 15 minutes, that leaves you,
About 2 minutes, 10 seconds
for each one. Well, Gary, I don't envy you because I go as long as I want to go. Obviously here. Thank you very much, for coming on. Appreciate it. Happy 4th of July to you, your family, and to everybody out there.
Same to you. Same to you.
All right, and we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. So what's on tap for the Power Play Post Show over the next 2 months? Well, we're going to have a few more interviews with some of the championship Binghamton Black Bears. We got a few guys in mind that we want to bring on. Just, like we did with Nolan Egbert, find out how their summer is going, maybe talk to them about a few different things than we normally would during the regular hockey season. And so you can learn a little bit more about these guys. So that's kind of what's on tap. We'll probably talk about a few other things and any late breaking news. But I think with the schedule being out, that's probably the biggest thing, right? That really kind of feeds in. We know when the season's going to start. We know the teams we're going to play against. We know the series and how they're all broken down. So that's probably the biggest thing that's going to happen. Now it's just a matter of the signings. I do think that it'll be very interesting to hear or see who Andreas and Brandt bring in as an assistant coach for Brandt. It's one of the things he wanted was a full-time assistant head coach or assistant coach for himself to help with a lot of the duties. And remember, he's general manager. He's the recruiter. He's talking to players all the time, and there are other things that, unfortunately, head coaches are probably doing in this league that they're not doing at the AHL and NHL level because there's a bigger support staff to do that. So it'll be very interesting. So that'll probably be the other kind of really big thing is when we find out who the assistant coach will be for the Binghamton Black Bears. So let's get to the must-reads, and we'll get you out of here for the day. The Power Play Post is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show for whichever platform you listen to your podcast, and please subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for the Power Play Post Show. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. Thank you to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and from the Fed League Flash, thank you very much to Gary Ryan. Folks, I am Bob Howard. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.